As you've heard from Damien, my name is Roland Molleers. I'm the director here at OHR LLS, and I have the pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of the UN Office of the High Representative for the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States, also known as OHR LLS. For that last group of countries, the small island developing states, the ocean is not a frontier, it is a home. The blue economy is not a concept, it is a necessity. It fuels jobs, food security, climate resilience, and cultural identity. And when governed wisely, it offers a rare dual dividend, thriving ecosystems and thriving economies. That's the vision at the heart of the Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS, and it is the purpose of today's webinar. We all meet today on the heels of the third UN Ocean Conference, where countries reaffirmed the 1.5 Celsius degree climate guardrail, endorsed new marine protected area targets, and advanced frameworks for high seas governance. But they also made it clear the era of pledges must give way to partnerships, and financing must flow where the needs are greatest. That momentum came with real numbers, over 25 billion euros in identified ocean transition investments and 8.7 billion euros in new commitments by 2030. And for us, this raises key questions for island nations. How do we translate global momentum into local outcomes? How do we ensure island-led initiatives are not just seen, but financed, delivered, and scaled? Today's webinar is part of the journey towards the 2026 SIDS Global Business Network Forum in the Maldives. That forum will not be just another gathering. It will be a platform for action. The goal is to bring forward bold, implementable, ABAS-aligned commitments that link policy, investment, and community ownership. At UN OHR LLS, we are working with partners across the UN system and beyond to support two strategic shifts. The first one is partnerships with purpose. Through the SIDS Partnership Framework and our SIDS Global Business Network, we are helping to connect sound policy with real projects and improve lives, protect ecosystems, and build resilience. Secondly, access to finance at speed and scale. We support innovative financing solutions from blended finance and guarantees to de-risking tools and MSME support, so that promising island-led initiatives can move from concept to capital and from vision to delivery. Today, this session is about solutions that travel. Let's keep the conversation focused on what works, what can scale, what can replicate, and what can land on the table in the Maldives as a measurable commitment. I thank you once again for being part of this effort and for all you do to keep the ocean and island communities thriving. I hand back the microphone to you, Damien. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Roland. And let me also take this opportunity to extend a big thanks from us. My name is Damien Sass. I'm a Sustainable Development Officer at the UN Office of the High Representative for the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States, OHRLLS. Thank you very much to Director Roland Molleers for those welcoming remarks. Shortly, we will hear also a keynote from Ambassador Janine Felsen, Permanent Representative of Belize to the United Nations. And after the opening segment, I'll be handing the floor over to Mr. Eric Gierske, Head of Sustainable Ocean Business at the UN's Global Compact. He will be introducing our panel speakers and also moderating the panel discussion. For our participants, if any of you wish to post any questions to the speakers, please feel free to use the chat box at any time, and we'll do our best to address your questions during the Q&A segment. So thanks again to Director Molleers, It's now my pleasure to invite Ambassador Jean Felsen to deliver the keynote. Many of you know Ambassador Felsen for her very strong leadership over the years in advancing sustainable development, ocean governance, as well as climate policy for SIDS. And we're really grateful to have her join us today. So over to you, Ambassador Felsen.
Thank you very much, Damien, and thank you to OHRLS for inviting me to join this webinar and to present some ideas. But really, these ideas are ideas and action that's been generated by small island developing states. So I'm just a mouthpiece. I think small island developing states bear witness to an undeniable truth, and one that the world is grasping now. That the blue economy, as Roland just said, it's not a concept. It is our reality. We have the ocean at our feet, and it has sustained us, it has protected us, and it connects us. We're all together on this one planet connected by the ocean. We may be small nations, but we are guardians of vast ocean spaces, and the concept note to this webinar stated 20% of EEZ. We say 30% of the ocean space is under the jurisdiction of small island developing states. We fully embrace our role as ocean stewards, and this was confirmed in the Abbas and reaffirmed in the 2025 UN Ocean Conference Declaration. For SIDS at Nice was definitely a milestone within the ocean decade. It consolidated the global commitment to ocean action, and specifically, as we just heard, to scale blue finance, to do more integrated planning and embed equity. And this is key, equity in ocean governance. So our task is definitely to translate, Roland, as you mentioned, commitments into equitable, inclusive, and economically viable outcomes. So we have to do so in a balanced manner, growing without degrading, including without exploiting, protecting without forsaking our development, and investing without deepening debt. SIDS have crafted innovative ways of responding to this challenge, but at the core, and we heard this all the way back in Samoa and all the way back to Bridgetown, at the core, we promote genuine and durable partnerships that aim to deliver both prosperity and protection. So what are these types of partnerships that can deliver? So across the SIDS, the most durable growth is obviously shared growth, where government, community, industry, and nature, let's include nature, we all have a stake in that shared growth. Public-private partnerships, something that's going to be highlighted, can power our blue economies from developing resilient ports, developing sustainable wastewater system, renewable energy grids. These represent, for investments for SIDS, stable long-term opportunities, but for our people, it's jobs, it's dignity, and it's resilience. Belize I'll use as an example, but there are many other examples across SIDS. Last year, or earlier this year, the World Bank's Blue Economy and Coastal Resilience Project committed 32 million to improve marine resource management, expand clean water access, and strengthen local capacity. It integrates data, carbon readiness, and inclusion, turning sustainability into opportunity. And we've gone even further to demonstrate how sustainability can support systemic transformation through our landmark Blue Bond and Debt for Marine Conversion with the Nature Conservancy. Belize restructured $553 million in debt by issuing a $364 million blue loan, cutting external debt by over $200 million. That's about 10% of our GDP. The transaction improved our credit profile to investment grade through the USDFC guarantees and reopened access to global markets. But crucially, it was linked to measurable marine conservation outcomes, harnessing our strong conservation record and turning government commitment into an investment opportunity. That was not happenstance, that was a strategy. It proved that good governance, credible data, and innovation can turn ocean protection into an asset class itself. Every SIDS can do this, and they have, with debt swaps, with blue bonds, with blended finance platforms, and credit enhancements, aligning fiscal sustainability with ecological integrity. And then underpinning this, and it came out in Abbas, is the need for data. We can map our costs. We can do natural capital accounting. We can do measurement of our ecosystem services. All of that builds credibility, it builds confidence, and we make that business case for stewardship very easily. Because data, we can't consider data just a cost. It is effectively a collateral. So what is the capital stack then that we're looking at when we're thinking about the opportunities that SIDS present as a business case? And we have to recognize that our good intentions must deliver in terms of pipelines of projects and when we're thinking about these things. But I don't like to just think of projectized approaches. We do need more programmatic approaches. But for the purposes of this discussion and thinking about what that capital stack could look like, I mentioned already public-private partnerships. We know that where there's some type of revenue generating project, then the tendency is to look towards those types of partnerships and potentially blue loans, which we don't tend to like to focus on too much because of the debt dynamics that SIDS face. When you're looking at scaling and alignment, in the case of with Belize and with other countries, we've looked towards blue bonds, looking for clear frameworks and verifiable outcomes. When we're trying to look at risk, innovation meets some level of uncertainty. That's where the blended finance prescription tends to arise, with guarantees aiming towards mitigating risk and crowding in private capital. At the community level, of course, you have SIDS who have demonstrated a good track record with micro and meso financing, which aim to empower smaller enterprises, the MSMEs that we know, and many of our countries, that's the nature of our private sector. When it comes to valuing our nature, the natural assets that we have, so our reefs, our mangroves, even potentially seagrass. We're looking to payment for ecosystem services, result-based payments, and even carbon credits to transform our protection into some form of streams for income streams. And it shows how ocean-based solutions can accelerate conservation gains while delivering climate resilience and returns. So this is what we're seeking, clear frameworks. We need the data, clear measurable returns, which give us the triple the dividends, economic, social, and environmental. So let me end where I started. The challenge of a balanced response, the blue economy being dependent on a large marine ecosystem, not just what's within our jurisdiction, that is also closely connected to a terrestrial ecosystem, demands cross-sectoral collaboration. Government setting policy and guarantees, looking to private sector to drive innovation and efficiencies, communities anchoring legitimacy and continuity, and international partners bringing capital, technology, and shared learning with us. These must move together if we are going to capture the potential that was envisioned long ago with the SIDS agenda, but reaffirmed over the past, over the 30 years of that agenda, included coordination. We're looking for that, not competition. We're looking for viability, not just plain focus on our vulnerability. So this is not about seeking charity. This is about a shared value, shared growth. It's about investing in systems that deliver return and resilience. So we need to blend deeper, move faster. We need to see our islands not as high risk, but as high return on impact. We need to build enabling frameworks and credible pipelines because Belize, and I see Angelique, Seychelles, Barbados, and many others have shown that our states can craft big solutions. The blue economy is not something a dream and blue sky thinking. It's just waiting to be funded. It is ready to be scaled. We just need partners strengthened partnerships to be strengthened, and promises to be kept. So thank you very much, and good luck with your webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Felsen. Thank you for highlighting those priorities for SIDS around the blue economy. Also, the reminder of the fact that there are also large ocean states and the stewardship role that brings as well. And thanks for sharing Belize's experience as well. I think there's a lot of lessons learned that can be translated across the SIDS. So yeah, always a great pleasure to hear your thoughts and views on these topics. So thanks again for joining us. So colleagues, this concludes our opening segment, and I'll now hand the floor to Eric to lead us through the panel discussion. Over to you, Eric.
Thank you so much, Damien, and thank you so much, Ambassador and Director. I think both opening remarks really set the scene here. I think it's we have to find what really works, as Molerus said, but it's also a real economy, as Ambassador Felsen said. I mean, this is about real jobs, real resilience. And I must say personally, from attending UNOC 1 in New York until UNOC 3 now in Nice, from COP 21 in Paris to COP 30 now in Belém, there has been an increasing awareness about SIDS and the blue economy. I mean, we are at a total different place. We are not accelerating fast enough, but it's really on top of the agenda. And we just have to find tools that really works, projects that are real for the ocean economies. And this is really what the seminar is about. And I was just myself attending the IMO negotiations in London 3 weeks ago. They were not successful, as we know, but we have to remember the SIDS and the blue economy is a deep integrated part of the net zero framework of IMO and the IMO funding mechanism. It will be a game changer when we manage to adopt it sometime a year, 2-3 years from now. It will be a considerable game changer for the blue economy at large, and especially for SIDS. And I think this is most importantly an example that things are moving forward, but we really have to find projects that create a real change, real jobs, real resilience, and as Ambassador Felsen mentioned. We have a great panel today. We have Angelique Popenoe from Alliance of Small Island States. We have Silvia Guccini from World Economic Forum. We have Ariane Steins-Meyer from URA, the Ocean Risk Resilience Action Alliance. We have Raphael Held from project leader from Marshall Islands, and we have Elena Martinez from SOS Biotech. And what we're going to talk about here today is about scalable partnerships and see how we can identify things that work and how can we scale it up in a complex world of small island states. It's not always comparable, but there are some mechanisms that we can deploy multiple places. And if I may, I will start with you, Angelique. And SIDS often have the ambition and the ideas, but they are in need of enabling conditions to really crowd in private and blended finance. I worked a lot on blended finance. I find it growing. I find the private capital increasingly in the appetite of this, but still it doesn't really trickle down to the SIDS at this point. So my question to you is, what policy reforms or enabling conditions have you found most effective in attracting private and blended capital in the SIDS projects?
Thank you very much, Eric, and thanks to the organizers for bringing this webinar together. So I'll try to be very succinct, given I've given this a lot of thought and could speak for a very long time. So I think maybe I'll pivot from where Ambassador Felsen spoke with regards to the importance of partnerships. And when we talk about a blended finance and attracting private capital to small island developing states, you're essentially talking about bringing additional partners to the table. And I think one of the things that we need to recognize is different partners have different motivations, right? And when you talk about private actors, and especially for the blue economy, you're not talking about the same actors that are attracted by your usual traditional investments, right? There is new funders that are coming, new funder types that are coming into this landscape. And one of the things we need to recognize is when it comes to sort of your pure private actor, they're more likely to be interested in having that return on investment. If you're looking at your impact investor, they want a return as well as impact. When you're looking at philanthropy, for example, that often plays a big role with blended finance, you're talking about not inherently getting a return in terms of monetary, but having a return in terms of social, environmental impacts that they're interested in. So I think that has to be the starting point that all SIDS have to appreciate in thinking about what are these enabling conditions that need to be put in place. And I think Ambassador Felsen articulated very nicely in her keynote about Belize's story. And this is what I found as well with regards to the enablers. And I will actually divide them into 3 buckets. So first is political will, right? You need the big political signals. The speeches at UNGA matter, right? The speeches on the sidelines of COP30 matter. So you need the political signals. You also need that track record that shows that you are committed to the blue economy, to the principles of the blue economy, to environmental protection. You also, it also really, really helps if you've got that natural capital, those assets within your jurisdiction, right? Belize, Seychelles, many SIDS with either vast ocean spaces, but not only vast, but like rich ocean spaces, right? Full of biodiversity and coral reefs and other things. And then the really interesting finding in terms of that first bucket is the new funder types on the sort of landscape are also interested in having trusted partners in country. That's also something that is likely to bring in investments. And those partners may be individuals, those partners may be organizations and institutions, but the reality is SIDS having invested travel time and travel funds to go to these events, these important relationships and networks are critical to enabling these investments as well. That's your first bucket. I call that your people political bucket. And then you've got your second bucket. That's really your enablers of the finance, your enablers of the deals, right? And those are allowing the agreements to be concluded, making sure you have the laws that enable loan repayments not to be subject to double taxation, anti-money laundering laws, anti-terrorism, anti-bribery. You know, those laws that you really need those to open the gates, if you like, to make sure that funding can flow. And that's another layer that's particularly important to enable the deal, but also to introduce transparency and accountability in the deal as well. And then your third layer is your impact laws. Right? Your enabling conditions when it comes to laws and policies, like your marine spatial planning tools to get you to reach impact goals, like your laws that Belize has a great one, the Fisheries Resources Act 2020, that looks at balancing the triple win of environment, people, and economic. So those are what I'd say are the three the 3 blocks that enable finance to flow. I'll end there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Angelique. I think that's a very good mental framework here, and probably a very practical one as well. And maybe I'll return back to you, but I would like to turn to Sylvia from World Economic Forum to build on this. And for everybody listening in here and watching the seminar, we have a Q&A form box, so you can just post questions there, and then we'll see if we have time to at least address a few of them. But Sylvia, it's a change in landscape. We see more and more private finance coming in as well. And as Angelique said, that changes the expectations of projects. And how do you see these roles evolving to drive sustainable growth and really ensure long-term ocean health, especially for SIDS, where, you know, small deals, different kinds of scalable projects, harder to pull? What's your thinking about that?
Thank you very much, Eric, and good morning, afternoon, or even night for some of the people online. Very, very nice to be here, and thanks for the invitation to contribute to this important discussion. And that's for a bit of context, I think, Eric, before I jump into the question on roles and shifting roles. I think I just wanted to share a little bit. I come from a sustainable development and environmental NGO background, and I joined actually the World Economic Forum where I work now, because I believe, as many of you here, that conservation outcomes can only endure if we do transform our economic and financial systems towards sustainability. And so at the World Economic Forum, what we're really trying to do is to try to engage and speak to sectors that do not speak the conservation language that we all know here, and try to help them to understand that economic growth, social prosperity, and also ocean health needs to advance together, right? And the business models that they are working on needs to change and shift towards resilience and long-lasting practices. And so we are working towards what we hope is going to be just in 30 years' time, a regenerative ocean economy. And we do work on this with some of you, Eric, Angelique, and also our colleagues. So hopefully all together we'll manage to shift some of this. And just for a little bit of context, Eric, I think what I've been experiencing since I've been working on the ocean agenda is that I think we are at an inflection point at the moment at the global level. So we were just in June at the UN Ocean Conference and the Blue Economy and Finance Forum. And we did witness unprecedented engagement and action actually taken by the private and finance sector. And this is something that we need to recognize. So the good news, I think, for SEEDS is that more and more these sectors are actually recognizing the ocean as a key opportunity. And they're not just coming to this fora to observe, but actually to invest, collaborate, and create those partnerships that are really needed, as Ambassador Felsen also mentioned. And so they recognize the ocean as financial stability, climate resilient, long-term prosperity, and so on and so forth. And this is something I think to mention also, because we're going through geopolitical and multi-crisis context, and it's not a given that the ocean keeps its role and is recognized as such a unifying force. And we see it in multilateralism for the ocean that has been really a steady force, I would say, in the past years. Yeah. And then I think that to go to your question also in terms of seeing the shifts between the public and private finance evolution, what I think we are increasingly seeing is that we are moving away from the parallel track of private versus public, essentially. And we do see those share risk partnerships that also were mentioned before, where every form of capital starts playing a complementary role. Of course, in the global context and the SEEDS context, things are different and can be different. But I think from a public finance perspective, we do see public finance playing more of a role of market creator. So we have government and multilateral banks using guarantees, concessional loans, and clear regulation to take early risk and attract private capital. Now in SEEDS, this is not always the case, I think, yet, but if we use concessional funds strategically, we could really try to use them not to finance everything, but unlock private capital. And as I was preparing for the webinar, I found a few examples in Fiji, the Bahamas, that are actually really encouraging and using concessional policy-based finance to crowd in the private sector and not replace them. Then on private finance, I think they are, of course, bringing the scale. And once we have the early risks reduced, they can actually do that, right? And I think that we're experiencing a little bit what we saw in renewables maybe 15 years ago, that is starting to happen for the ocean economy and some sectors more broadly. And so for SEEDS, I think if we channel investments into areas that are that have both commercial and community returns, like sustainable tourism, coastal resilience, nature-based solution, etc., then we can really make this work, and blended projects in these areas can be a proof point actually, and build confidence then of private investor, institutional, regional investors. And then finally, philanthropy. Angelique mentioned philanthropy, and this is certainly a critical one that we know has to play a role and plays a complementary role. It's flexible, risk tolerant, of course, and helps catalyzing and bring innovation in. At the forum specifically, a few years ago, we started working on the philanthropic sector for in the space of climate and nature specifically, and we have an initiative, the Giving to Amplify Earth Action Initiative, Gaia, that actually engages over 100 philanthropic institutions that are aligning their efforts to really bridge early stage funding gap for nature and also the ocean, of course. So this is a little bit what I would like to say, and maybe just as a reflection, as we get into the crunch here, where we have 5 years to meet the SDGs and so many other global frameworks, 30 by 30, let's say the conservation and restoration agenda that includes also the high seas and BBNJ, it's certainly a very important one to advance and a very relevant one for SEEDS, where SEEDS are leading the way because they do know that marine conservation is a development strategy, right? So that agenda, I think, is still very public finance driven. At the moment, we see philanthropy being engaged, but private sector is really like still a big gap. And so from the World Economic Forum perspective, we're trying to collaborate with many partners in the 30 by 30 space, essentially to try to help shifting this situation, let's say, and supporting key industries to rethink their business models and connect conservation to the strategies. So to conclude, I think that if we align leadership, local ownership, and shared risk finance, SEEDS can really show that ocean prosperity and sustainability are really actually two sides of the same coin.
Super, thank you, Sylvia. I think this is a very critical point, and it's really in the middle of the development that we see now, that there is interest from private capital to engage, but they need other types of capital, concessional, first loss capital, to be able to utilize that risk momentum. And this is something that has been identified in the One Ocean Finance Facility Initiative, the Inter-UN Agency Initiative. We have seen ocean investment protocols and the blue bond frameworks really trying to set some matrix so that we can agree on what the risks are, what should be concessional and what should be private. And this is a big momentum. And the next speaker, of course, Ariane from URA. You have for long worked on combining projects and really find ways to make coalitions, so you can have such projects such as the Back Blue to unlock and scale investments for the SIDS. And what has proven most catalytic in your experience?
Yeah, thank you, Eric, and as well also the organizer for inviting us on the table. This has been a really interesting discussion. And yeah, ORA in itself, as you mentioned, is an alliance. So I just wanted to state here we're a multi-sector alliance with 130 members from both the private sectors, including also insurance companies, which I think play a crucial role in this discussion as well, but also science partner governments, NGOs. So it has been a really, over the last 5 years, a collaborative approach to address that what Sylvia from the WEF has said, bringing the different stakeholders together, and what we found also in the beginning to help to speak the same language, base sort of our knowledge on the same sort of facts and really sort of learn together. And so I think coming back to your question in terms of what has been proven really successful is, to some extent, what Angelique has also said, and some of the previous speakers, is having these enabling conditions, obviously, in place, but really sort of the conversation and the partnerships. And so for us, a first step was to build a project pipeline, which was funded by the UK and Canadian government, which always had an innovative, locally driven finance and insurance product in its core. And this is where, for example, we have been piloting and now scaling some of the parametric insurance products, but also other crucial sort of new elements, which were really locally driven, but has signaled to the market that not only there is the demand, but there are the products to be able to scale. And at the Blue Economy Finance Forum, alongside UNOC 3, in Monaco earlier this year, we also, therefore, together with the WEF and others, published a report calling Making the Waves, which now actually has all the input gathered before the BEF in terms of what are these product pipelines, in addition to the 60 products we as ORA have been funding and scaling so far. So really bringing sort of that to the table was one of the enabling conditions, so that we can see there is the product you can invest into and it's scalable. The second piece is, and that is the Blue commitment you just mentioned, Back Blue, is that we have been launching together with banks and the insurance companies, and the WEF are a partner of this, as well as others, a commitment by the private sector to basically move to a more sustainable and regenerative approach around managing the assets in terms of the sustainable and regenerative blue economy. And so by the BEF, we were able to really launch this initiative with our partners, also not only with the WEF, but UN Race to Resilience and UNEP-FI, given also UNEP-FI has worked on the sustainable principle for the blue economy. And already these partners had engaged together with us, some of the partners. And so now we have nearly 3.5 trillion US dollars under more sustainable assets, or at least having that commitment to move this way. And I think that has been really crucial, not only to signal therefore the demand and alignment across the private sector and have themselves sort of pushing towards a more regenerative approach, but it also has a discussion around standards and metrics, which I think we haven't sort of touched base, but I think it's important to realize then we talk about this transition to a more regenerative and sustainable blue economy, we need to talk about standards, and then really making the connections and working around the coalition to build sort of the capital market for the ocean. And one thing maybe to also say that ORA has been working with some of our partners to build a sea change impact financing facility, which is basically a framework under which we're incubating new financial instruments. And I think most relevant for the SIDS is the Outrigger Impact Fund, which is the first impact fund dedicated towards investing into SMEs and medium small enterprises within the SIDS context. And for us, it has been really crucial to see what the role of SIDS are in terms of shaping, therefore, not only the project pipeline, but also sort of the global architecture in terms of, accessing finance, but also making sure that it meets sort of the most urgent needs on the ground. I will stop there and happy to follow up with some more questions.
Yes, very useful, Ariana. And this is really about packaging sizable projects, smaller projects, making it more attractive for the larger investors, following universally recognized standards and metrics. And I think the last one is really where we have seen a lot of development. I think back to Angelique's point earlier on, we need to build more an integrated capacity locally from the SIDS themselves when such big asset classes are being designed or mechanisms are being designed, because this can't be a top-down. This is also, like the ambassador said initially, it's a shared growth. And that's, I think, it's very critical to get qualified investment. So it's real jobs and real resilience for the SIDS themselves. So on that note, I'm going to move on to our next speaker, Rafael, and we're going to talk about low carbon sea transport. Of course, for SIDS, sea transport is a lifeline. It's totally dependent on it, of course. And on the back of the IMO negotiations in London, I mean, we are all very disappointed it didn't go through as expected. But now we have a year more at least to really get down to the details on what's in it for SIDS, but also how can we decarbonize small island states sea transport, and how can we internalize the global shipping economy, a $1 trillion economy, into also growth opportunity for SIDS. So please, Rafael, and I know you are in 2 a.m. in the morning, so very grateful for having you with us. Please take the floor. And we can see the slides.
Good morning.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Distinguished speakers, directors, it's a great pleasure for us to be here in this panel. My name is Rafael Held. I'm the project director of the German-funded Low Carbon Sea Transport project. I'm here with
everyone. I'm Marie, and I'm currently here. Great to be with you.
We're going to give you an overview of a rather practical approach that we have been implementing here in the Marshall Islands in the last 8 years.
Yeah, maybe just to context, probably familiar with it. Anyways, the Marshall Islands are an atoll nation, consisting about 29 atolls, over 1,000 islands, scattered across an area that is 5 times the size of Germany, to give you the scale. And the nation, and particularly the shipping sector here, is almost entirely dependent on expensive imported fossil fuel. So that's where we're situated in.
Yeah, the German government, the International Climate Initiative, has commissioned this project 8 years ago with a volume of roughly 80 million US dollar. We're working here with one ministry, the Ministry of Transport, and with a huge diversity of different partners, regionally, nationally, but as well internationally.
Yeah, so what is the project actually about? Our main objective is the reduction of CO2 emissions here in this shipping sector, to ultimately reach several impacts that you can see here. And we do that by focusing on several project components. So inside like transport, but also inter-admiral transport. We supported the Marshallese government in their high-level policy contributions. For example, at the IMO, we were also in London 3 weeks ago, and currently we're trying to really upscale what we learned here in the Marshall Islands, in the region, in the Northern Pacific, and ensure that the project runs even if our project will come to an end next year.
Thank you, Maria. Said a huge diversity of actors is part of this initiative, from the public sector, civil society, as well private companies. I strongly believe this multitude of actors has ensured the current condition of the project. I think in the different areas that Marie has briefly summarized, we have made huge progress, and I think those elements certainly contribute to the topics that have been discussed here. We'll continue directly now going into the question, Eric. What does a sustainable blue economy look like for SIDS, and how do we ensure it delivers both prosperity and resilience? We strongly believe we can demonstrate this topic on 4 different pillars. For example, the first major component of our project, the transportation over long ocean distances, very specific and unique here in the Marshall Islands, partly over 1,000 kilometers from the main atoll of Majuro to, for example, Enewetak. We have provided a new design, a concept design for an ocean-going vessel that can transport goods and passengers with a very severely reduced carbon emission footprint, and therefore allow for cost-efficient, safe and reliable independent sea transport. As well, we've been convinced that inclusive trade and connectivity are one of the important elements in ensuring those goals, prosperity and resilience. The transportation based on wind-assisted ship propulsion, in this sense, specifically what we've been doing, allows the Marshallese people to basically be much more independent from the import of fossil fuels. I can just give you an example. 1 American gallon of gasoline costs up to $20 US in the neighboring islands outside of Majuro here. Marie?
Yeah, and I think the other 2 crucial aspects here are really also about the remit role of the Marshallese people, because on the one hand, we try to use the traditional maritime knowledge that already exists here, so navigation, sailing, local boat building, because we thought that it has a huge value, and by integrating those traditions into modern innovation through, for example, collaboration also with a German university, and we really try to preserve this identity while also creating livelihoods for the people, and they are proud of those boats and canoes that we developed together with them. And then also a crucial aspect of the project is just the human capacity and resilience building, so that the system really endures that we're currently building up here. We invested a lot in training. You can see the Jalameto Maritime Training Center that we through the project have built here for maritime education and technical skills. So that's how we in the project try to build resilience here.
Right.
Good.
Eric, we give it back to you if there's any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Extremely interesting to see how you in the Marshall Islands have different local projects tackling actually a massive global issue of climate greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, we all have to do our part, but resilience, of course, for the small island states is one of the big challenges. And in this transition, we have to create good jobs. And I think Marshall Island, both a big flag state, but also a small economy that needs to transition to see how we can propel the blue economy going forward. Our last speaker in the panel, before we actually also have a few statements from the Deputy Ambassador of Portugal, is Elena Martinez from SOS Biotech. And this is really about creating jobs that are relevant for the blue economy. And Elena, from your vantage point, how does a sustainable blue economy look like in practice for the SIDS? And we heard from the Marshall Islands here, trying to break ground on new technologies, competencies and skills. From your point of view, how do we ensure it benefits local communities as well as ecosystems from not this very shipping industry side, but from your projects?
Yeah, well, again, pleasure to be here. And I love specifically the part that you mentioned in practice, because many times when things are being created or regulated, they do not take this into account. What theoretically works is not the same as was in practice and in real world works. And I would love to give as an example what we have doing in the work with SOS Biotech, because I think it's a perfect example for this. In our case, we are tackling a crisis that most Caribbean islands sadly are familiarized with, and is the Sargassum seaweed invasions. And this has created a triple economic crisis for us, for our environment, for our economies, but also for our public health, something that's not talked about enough. But as everything in this life, it's a question of perspective. Sargassum can be an invasion, but at the same time, Sargassum is a seaweed, and seaweed has a huge market. And therefore, we decided to flip the script and see it as an opportunity. And to understand it as an opportunity on seeds, we need to understand the reality of seeds. And what have been already mentioned is that, okay, we may be small in size, but that not equals that we are small in opportunities or in possibilities. And many times when we are talking about developing business models, such as our case in seeds, specifically our headquarters in the Dominican Republic, but we also work in Antigua and Barbuda, Mexico, and Puerto Rico, there's a problem with the type of words that are used. In our case, for example, we are a already profitable company, but many times people are still referring to us as a idea. We love your idea. We love your intentions. Oh, what an amazing project. And that's a huge problem, because it's associated that seeds can only create ideas, projects, or funny school activities, and not business models that works and that can be scaled up and that can even be referent for other regions. Our example is that we have decided not to reinvent the wheel or do science fictions, and we take advantage of what's already existing in our communities. Specifically, first of all, our main workforce, fishermen, to be the ones to harvest the invasive seaweed, and created technology to transform already existing vessels, fishermen vessels, to be these seaweed harvesters. Therefore, in this way, we need less money to implement the solution, and at the same time we are creating local formal employment for these fishermen that many times are earning 3 times more, at the same time that they are being blue actors, because they are harvesting the seaweed and therefore providing environmental sanitation services. And then we upcycle the seaweed. We create different products for the market. We have nowadays 3 that are mainly focused for the agricultural sector. And nowadays we have even started to exporting them to the US, proving again that seeds not needs to be safe. We just need to be heard and supported. And we can, our systems, our models can be even scale up. And for example, in case of invasive seaweeds, now we are becoming a reference. Spain and Portugal are now affected by Rugulopteryx, and we are already scaling up to create pilots of the solutions that we have already working in the Caribbean islands, but now to these new regions. And the last point regarding the jobs part, I think the most important will be to understand that it's not charity. To involve like the local workforce, women, youth, vulnerable communities is not an act of charity. No, not at all. In our case, fishermen are the people best trained to do this job. If we have people that have the hands-on experience, that have the knowledge, that know exactly where to do it, when to do it, how to do it, why I'm gonna try this as I'm doing an act of charity for employing the people that are best prepared for it. With women, with youth, is the same. Integrating them in the value chain is not something to do to fulfill an agenda. It's the opposite. It's for the solutions to truly succeed and to truly work on a larger scale and on time in our communities. And again, like Mark, the part of the type of language that we use when we refer to businesses or projects implemented in seeds, and that being small doesn't mean to have a small impact on the world. And I think what have been already said here and all the examples that have been provided of all the work that is being done is the perfect example of it.
Thank you, Elena. I think it's a very important point, echoed also by other representatives from SIDS here, that it has to start with the people with the competences on the ground in the SIDS economy. They have competences, they have projects, and of course we have to understand how we can support that. And hopefully we have time for a few comments after the Deputy Ambassador's remarks. I would just say that UNOC 2, the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon, was a big success, and on the back of that we actually initiated our own ocean centers together with the Lloyd's Register Foundation. So we have on the ground ocean clusters working together, so that we, when we go to other UN meetings, multilateral meetings, can work bottom up and not always top down as a UN agency. And I think that really is to integrate understanding of the local economy into the global solutions, because much of the financing is global and it has to adapt to local capacities, talents, and situations, of course. So please share if you have questions in the chat or in the Q&A. And it's my honor to invite the Deputy Ambassador of Portugal, Mr. Jorge Eduardo Ferreira Silva Aranda, to offer a few reflections. Please, Deputy Ambassador.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. I will try to be more succinct than my actual full name that you just mentioned. Just to tell you that we are very pleased to again participate in this webinar series. And blue economy is very important for Portugal, and it's neither a blue sky thinking, as Ambassador Felsen stated, nor an act of charity, as Elena Martins also just referred lately. It's indeed something very concrete and something that we have to look forward to and implement with the political will, which was also a sentence which we heard here this morning, but also with the involvement of every stakeholder, including and most especially the private sector. I will say three sentences. You, Eric, mentioned the UNOC 2 that we hosted in Lisbon, and we were very happy indeed to already then identify the need for partnerships in finance. We launched, as you know, the Sustained Blue Economy Investment Forum, which you also had the pleasure of again reiterating the year thereafter in 2023. And we are also very happy to see that in UNOC 3 there were similar events that followed up, building on this good and positive experience. My second sentence is also regarding political will to also inform all our partners and other colleagues here present today that the blue economy is enshrined in the Portuguese National Ocean Strategy 2030. And we have an initiative called the Blue Hub Portugal, where we are investing over $100 million to link precisely all these dots: research centers, universities, startups, and investors. And its platform called the Deal Room has already connected more than 1,600 blue economy ventures worldwide. And we're happy to continue this job of linking knowledge, capital, and technology. And my third and last sentence is just to invite everybody to apply to a program which we have been running for a couple of years and which is part of our development cooperation strategy. It's called the UN Portugal Ocean Fellowship. It's a capacity building program. We host in Portugal a series of training and events and a very hands-on approach with all things related to ocean, including blue economy and ocean governance, with a view to helping implement the Antigua Barbuda agenda for SIDS. We will be, we just finished a second edition this year. We'll be hosting another one in May next year. So please join us in Lisbon for the third and following editions. Once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and we are very helpful, and we are very committed to continue to be helpful in this regard.
Thank you so much, George. Very useful, and thank you for the Portuguese leadership on this. Extremely interesting. Maybe I can ask for 1 or 2 comments, and maybe start with you, Raphael. Just sensible time. We have 4 minutes left. Since you're in the middle of the night and stayed up this night to be with us, these policies, initiatives from Portugal or Norway or EU and other, that's part of your portfolio now, of course. But to what extent, if you're honest, are they properly informed from the local community to really address the capacity, the skills, the interest and the policies locally, and to scale that, would you say?
Thank you, Eric. Let me just briefly think those ideas that have been shared. I think in the first place, if I speak now, I think they are well known here. Here in the Marshall Islands, we work very closely with those institutions, as you've seen, on a different level. They are all known. I would say the problem might rather be the time resources. I mean, the ambition here of our project is very high. The ambition of the Marshallese people involved is very high. At the end of the day, we're trying to showcase something throughout the entire Pacific that hasn't been done before. So on the one side, there's a lot of initiatives and ideas and policies going on, and people want to be engaged. On the other side, that they only has 24 hours. I think we really just need to focus on what is important to make this proof of concept a success. What was mentioned just before by the ambassador, I think that's something where I thought that's exactly important, the political will that we see, but we also wish to see it more, because without any political will, I think there is no continuation of this project, especially after the decision taken in London 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now the introduction of the levy being postponed, which was the big hope for the Pacific to introduce the equitable change in maritime transport. I think it's difficult. What our advantage is here, we're working with a very comfortable fund from the German government that has understood the meaning of maritime transport 10 years ago, I would say quite early. The Marshallese people did that too in that time, because there have been some visionaries, I think, in place. And this allows us to work here with a highly ambitious team. And something really important, I believe, with our partners, what they do appreciate is continuity. Continuity between individuals that have been involved in this implementation since day one. I hope that gives an idea.
Very useful, Rafa. And I think everybody really recognize the key points there. One very last comment from you, Angelique. You were nodding here. I mean, working in the UN myself, I was working many years in shipping, but the bureaucracy of UN and governments when it comes to programs can be overwhelming. And what should be done to make it leaner and more predictable and relevant? Very brief, 1 sentence. Big question, small answer.
Yeah, huge question. No, it's I think the first step to do all of that is to go to the countries and ask them themselves, right?
Exactly.
To make sure that it's actually needs driven, and that it's actually responding to those needs. I think oftentimes in the UN, perhaps we get stuck into producing things that we are accustomed to producing, but doesn't necessarily respond to the needs that are required. So I say, let's start from the bottom up.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you to a great panel. We could have talked 1 more hour for sure. I'll now hand it back to you, Damien, to close the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Eric, and also our friends at the UN Global Compact. Already also huge thanks to our opening speakers, Director Roland Mollerus and Ambassador Jeannie Felsen. Also a big thank you to our panel speakers and your respective organizations, the Alliance of Small Island States, the World Economic Forum, the Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance, Germany's Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, GIZ, of course, SOS Biotech. Thanks also to Deputy Ambassador Randa, Portugal, for your interventions. Your contributions today have really showcased what is taking place on the ground, but also what more is needed in terms of scaling up investment-ready blue economy initiatives for island nations. And this indeed will also help us to shape discussions at next year's SIDS Global Business Network Forum in the Maldives. Likewise, thank you to all the participants for joining, and we hope that you found the discussions enriching. As we look ahead, we hope to stay closely connected with all of you as we prepare for next year's forum. And we also expect to announce the dates soon, but we're currently looking at July. I'm losing my voice here, I'm not sure why. July, August of next year. We're working with the government of Antigua and Barbuda as well as host of the SIDS Center of Excellence on the idea of launching this new center's Island Investment Forum at the SIDS Global Business Network Forum. In terms of the webinar series, our next webinar will be on 12th December, where we'll be focusing on renewable energy solutions in SIDS. It's going to be held on the margins of the UN's Global Multi-Stakeholder SIDS Partnership Dialogue, and we'll share further details, including the exact timing on the 12th, as well as registration links in the coming days. Thank you so much again for joining, and we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar and ultimately in the Maldives. Thanks again, goodbye, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.